We start reading verse 23, where Narada Muni starts to speak about his previous life. He speaks to his disciple Srila Vyasadeva. So before we read, we glorify Lord Krishna with the following words. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 23. O Muni, in my past life, in the last millennium, I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of Brahmins who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Text 24. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty and I did not speak more than required. Once only by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus, being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time, the very nature of the transcendentalist became attracted to me. O Vyasadeva, in that association, and by the mercy of the great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus I listened attentively. My taste for hearing the personality of Godhead increased at every step. 27. O great sage, as soon as I got taste for the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear the great-souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the mode of passion and ignorance vanished. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with mind, body, and mind. As they were leaving, those Bhaktivedantas, who are very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject, which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. By that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that one can return to him and personally meet him. O Brahman Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. O great soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him by repeatedly remembering his names and qualities. I will read till text 14. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva, along with his plenary expansions Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarsana. Thus, he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. O Brahmins, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna I was endowed with first the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service. Please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pains. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Now we go back to the first verse. It's 23, I think. Yeah, 23. We can repeat this together. 1, 5, 23. You have it? You have it? 23. Aham puratita bhave bhavam mune dasyastu kasyasana veda vadina nirupito balaka eva yoginam Susosane pravishine viviksatam. Aham puratita bhave bhavamune dasyastu kashyasana veda vandinam. Nirupito balaka eva yoginam Susosane pravishine viviksatam. Aham puratita bhave bhavamune Dasyastu Kashasana Vedavadinam. Nirupito Balaka Eva Yoginam. Sususanipa Vishini Viviksatam. Aham Puratita Bhave Bhavam Muni. Dasyastu Kashasana Vedavadinam. Nirupita Balaka Eva Yoginam. Sususane Vishini Viviksatam. Aham Puratita Bhave Bhavam Muni. Dasyastu Kashana Vedavadinam. Nirupita Balaka Eva Yoginam. Sususane Vishini Viviksatam. Aham Puratita Bhave Bhavam Muni. Dasyastu Kayasana Vedavadinam. Nirupito Balaka Eva Yoginam. Sususane Vishini Viviksatam. Word for word translation. Aham, I, Pura, formerly, Atita Bhave, in the previous millennium, Abhavam became Muni, or Muni, Dasya of the maidservant, two, but Kasyashana, certain, Vedavadinam, of the followers of Vedanta, Nirupita, engaged, Balaka, a boy servant, Eva, only, Yoginam, of the devotees, Susosane, in the service of Pravrishi, during the 4 months of the rainy season. Nirviviksatam, living together. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. O Muni, in my past life, in the last millennium, I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of Brahmins who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Purport. The wonder of an atmosphere surcharged with devotional service to the Lord is briefly described herein by Sri Narada Muni. He was the son of the most insignificant parentage. He was not properly educated. Still, because his complete energy was engaged in the service of the Lord, he became an immortal sage. Such is the powerful action of devotional service. The living entities are the marginal energy of the Lord, and therefore they are meant for being properly utilized in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. When this is done, one situation is called. When this is not done, one situation is called Maya. Therefore, the illusion of Maya is at once dissipated as soon as one's full energy is converted in the service of the Lord instead of in sense enjoyment. From the personal example of Sri Narada Muni in his previous birth, it is clear that the service of the Lord begins with the service of the Lord, of the Lord's bona fide servants. The Lord says that the service of his servants is greater than his personal service. Service of the devotee is more valuable than the service of the Lord. One should therefore choose a bona fide servant of the Lord, constantly engaged in his service, accept such servant as the spiritual master and engage himself in his service, in the spiritual master's service. Such a spiritual master is a transparent medium by which to visualize the Lord, who is beyond the conception of the material senses. By service of the bona fide spiritual master, the Lord consents to reveal himself in proportion to the service rendered. Utilization of the human energy in the service of the Lord is the progressive path of salvation. The whole cosmic creation becomes at once identical with the Lord as soon as service in relation with the Lord is rendered under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The expert spiritual master knows the art of utilizing everything to glorify the Lord, and therefore, under his guidance, the whole world can be turned into the spiritual abode by the divine grace of the Lord's servant. Read the verse again. Aham puratita bhave bhavan muni tasyastu kasyasana vedavatinam niyopito balaka eva yoginam susosane prafrisinir vivipsata. Translation. O Muni, in my past life in the last millennium, I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of the Brahmins who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their service. Om Ajnana Timanasya Janansana Shanakya Sakshvanmitam Yena Tasmai Shikove Namaha Chitchetaya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupakadamyam Dadati Svam Padantika Vandeham Shiyo Shiyuda Padakamanam Shiyum Vaishnavam Sam Shirupam Jagajatam Sakam Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sativam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sakalita Shivishakam Vitam Sham He Krishna Karuna Samudina Bando Jatpate Gopesha Gopkakam Taranda Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaura Hira Devin Vidavanesve Vishabana Sutadevi Pranamama Haripriya Pankha Kalpta Vishaki Prasna Vivsha Padnam Pavanvyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvanya Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Desatarane Srila Prabhupada ki. In the previous verses, the Narada Muni chastised his disciple, Srila Vyasadeva, that you did a great job, he said, writing all these Puranas and this Mahabharata. But he said, are you only concerned with the body and the mind? But with the soul? You wrote all this Karma Kanda literature that people in this world are not really inclined for sense enjoyment. And you have inspired them to go into sense enjoyment in the name of religion. That is really, that's condemned, that's not good. Is that the defect in your writings is that you did not glorify the Supreme Lord sufficiently. Therefore, at the end of the meeting, there Srila Narada Muni will tell Vyasadeva to meditate on the absolute truth with devotion and write Srimad Bhagavatam. What is Srimad Bhagavatam? It's everything about Krishna in the Vedas collected, put together, that in the Bhagavatam. We cannot read all the Vedas, even not the Puranas. You need in one life you cannot do it. So therefore, all the essence of all these Vedas is brought together in the Bhagavatam. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedasya sarva aham eva vedyam. That Krishna says in Gita, I'm to be known by the Vedas. Because if we know Krishna, then only we can know who we are. Because we are a part of Krishna, we are the servant of Krishna. So transcendental knowledge and transcendental realization start with knowing Krishna. But now Narada Muni will convince Srila Vyasadeva by giving him a powerful demonstration of bhakti by telling about his previous life. In his previous life, it is that in the previous millennium, a millennium is 4 cycles. This millennium is 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas. That's a long time. I think one yuga, one cycle of the 4 yugas is more than 4 million years. So multiplied by thousands. That's some time ago. So in that millennium, he was a Gandharva on the higher planetary systems, on the heavenly planets. He was a very handsome Gandharva. His name was Upavarana. And he was a beautiful singer. He was singing very beautiful songs. And he was very handsome. He attracted a lot of females, who had a lot of girlfriends, kind of playboy. he was mostly, Prabhupada said he was singing cinema songs, glorifying the demigods. But, but then one day there was a Sankirtan festival organized by great sages in the heavenly planet, meant to glorify the Supreme Lord. And he went there with his girlfriends and started to sing his cinema songs. And then the sages cursed him. You should take birth as a Sudra on earth. But in that life of course, if a sage is cursing, it's factually it's a blessing in disguise. That because he takes a birth, as it is said here in the verse, I was born the son of a certain maidservant. That interesting. Is a son of a maidservant, but there is no father. It's no mention of father or something. Father is already gone. It's like a Kali Yuga situation. That most families are breaking up in Kali Yuga. That the father is already gone. And his mother was a maidservant, was serving these Bhaktivedantas, these great sages, who came together for 4 months during the rainy season, because when during the rainy season they cannot travel. And they are together discussing about Krishna Katha, the Bhagavatam. And he was engaged in the service, in their service, was serving them. Means his mother was cooking and he was serving them prasad. And then after they had eaten, he would ask them, please, can I take your remnant? And during the day, he was hearing their discussions. And by that, it is said in the next verse that he became attracted to Krishna. He became attracted to the process, to the sages. And that's very important. Association of the devotees and serving devotees. And that is what Prabhupada explains in the purport. And that was already mentioned in the second chapter of the first canto, where Shelvyasadeva says, Susurso Shadadanasya Vasdeva Kataruchi Syanmat Sevya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. That if you hear about Krishna Katha, and at the same time you serve the spiritual master or those who are advanced, that produces taste together. You need to do both, not just hearing, also serving. The hearing must also lead to serving. And if you do both, taste comes. If one of both is missing, no taste. That's important. We chant out every morning in the Bhagavatam class. Nastre Sabatresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavata Tamasve Bhakti Bhakti Naisve. By daily attendance of the class of the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is nearly destroyed as the main principle. And the next verse explains that Tato Chastamoguva Kamalopasya Satai Teret Anavatam Stitve Satve Prasidati. Surely the influence of the mode of passion and ignorance is removed from the heart, and one comes to goodness. Therefore, it said in the previous verse, it's nearly destroyed. One comes to goodness. Goodness is also a material mode. And finally, from goodness, one goes to transcendence. But when one is in goodness, one gets taste. taste comes. Because what takes your taste away is the mode of passion and ignorance. And he was serving them for a few months, and it is said in one of the next verses, yes, he was self-controlled, he was sober, he was 5 years old. 5 years old children want to play. But he lost that, all this. He understood the reality of life, although he was only 5 years old, just by hearing in association of these sages. And so that's a very powerful demonstration. Because after 4 months, these sages were leaving. But if he continued to follow their instructions, hearing daily the Bhagavatam and chanting, but he had only his mother. His mother was very much attached to him. Great attachment. But then, one day his mother went to milk a cow in the middle of the night. Who is going to milk a cow in the middle of the night? But she did, one way or another. And when she was milking the cow, she was bitten by a cobra and left her body. And interesting is there, little Narada sees that, and he sees the hand of the Lord. He sees, she's very much attached to me. Now Krishna takes her away. Now I'm free. And he performed all the rituals. And then he started to walk to the north, walking and chanting for days. And it's described in the Bhagavatam. He sees schools, mines, forests, beautiful mountains, that he's all going to and then finally one day he comes at a pipala tree, a banyan tree, and sits under the tree and starts to chant, and suddenly he's overflooded by ecstasy. Tears come from his eyes, and he sees the Lord in his heart, and is completely in ecstasy. But then suddenly it's taken away, and a voice comes saying, I gave you the experience because I gave you the experience to perceive me in your heart, but you are not completely pure yet. Therefore, you will not see me anymore in this lifetime. Interesting. And then Narada tries again to chant following the instructions of the sages, but it doesn't get the experience again. But having had that experience, is so enthusiastic in his service. And then at a certain moment, as a flash of light that suddenly he was in his spiritual body. He left his mortal body and he was in his spiritual body. And then he entered the body of Mahavishnu. And during the next millennium, he came out as so-called as the son of Brahma. Brahma was meditating with devotion, and Narada Muni came out of his mind, and he appeared. That's interesting. It is said that when he got his spiritual body, he entered the body of Mahavishnu. That's a long time until the next creation. That, but Lord, but for Mahavishnu, the creation is one exhalation. It doesn't take much. So time is different, experienced by Mahavishnu that because he controls time. So time, that's interesting. That time are different places, different experience. That's one day on the moon, one moon day is 30 days here. That's interesting. That, but yeah, then Brahma, Satyaloka, Brahmaloka, that different time experiences. But for Mahavishnu, the whole creation is what? Just a second, an exhalation. And that's the experience, Mahavishnu. That's the spiritual platform. That time in the spiritual world has no influence. Here, time in the material world is Krishna. Krishna says, I'm time. I'm the destroyer of everyone and everything. I'm the great annihilator. So due to time, this body becomes old, changes, and so on. So that's the influence of time. But that's not there, that influence on the spiritual platform. So when Narada Muni got his spiritual body, he entered the body of Mahavishnu, and then it was like a second, and he came out of the body of Brahma, that in his spiritual body, but he was not created. He just came out. That should be understood. A spiritual body is not created. And then he became Narada Muni. That's a beautiful illustration, or why not in self-realization, or when it comes to the spiritual platform. That the process is nicely described, but most important is it starts with association of great sages, association of the spiritual master. That's the first thing. Without that step, we cannot understand Krishna. We cannot understand ourselves. And this is explained in 1154 Bhagavad Gita, that there Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, you can know me as I'm standing before you only by Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that one cannot even begin to understand Krishna if one does not take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So that association is important. That is by association that we get realizations that Srila Prabhupada explains basic principles in the purport that because the first thing is to understand that everything of the Lord, Everything that exists in this material world is Krishna's energy. That, and energies of Krishna, if we use them in Krishna's service, that then it, it helps us to make spiritual advancement. But when this is not done, Srila Prabhupada said, we are not using things in Krishna's service, but for our own benefit, for the benefit of our body and mind. That is Maya, illusory energy. And from this example that Narada Muni gives of his own life, spiritual life begins with service to the devotees, service to the spiritual master. Because that is also revealed by Lord Narayan. Service to the devotees is higher than service to Lord Narayan. That interesting. That is so valuable that, of course, we need to know who is the devotee. That devotee, you have three levels. That the Kanishta, the materialistic devotee, that our acharyas, many commentaries say we should take a distance, not take their association. But the madhyam and the one who is all of vain devotional service, or one who is self-realized, that we should serve all those who are more advanced than us. That's the point. And that is what now that in Kali Yuga, serving someone more advanced than us, that we are all fallen in Kali Yuga. That's the advantage of being the most fallen. You cannot fall deeper. You can only go up and serve those who are more advanced. So this is an important principle explained here, that utilization of the human energy in the service of the Lord is the progressive path of salvation. We see also generally in the Western society, like 100, 200 years ago, and they built these churches in the service of the Lord. Very nice. We see many art, many places. But today, it's not there anymore. That impetus to serve the Supreme Lord. But of course, the process and the daily morning program Prabhupada gave us is all about serving the servant of the Lord and serving the Lord. That's all. The whole, because also our chanting is Rupa Goswami said, is a service rendered by the tongue to the Supreme Lord. Even taking prasad is also service rendered by the but of course, like in 1864, 66, Sarvadhamam Parichayam Mamakam Sampacham Tvam Sarvapavyamukshishyam Machucha. Where Krishna says, surrender unto me. Just do this Manmanabhav Madhvakto I explained in the next verse, and forget all the other things. Yes. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that one must become expert to engage oneself 24 hours a day so that one cannot do anything else than thinking of Krishna. So, and that principle is explained here that yes, we need to use everything in Krishna's service. That is important. Good. This is what I could say on this purport. Narada Muni's life. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for this. We see in this case, Narada Muni, that he, from what I understand, that he rendered service, I say, with the mind, hearing, and with the body as as to the sages. But we see also in the case of Parikshit Maharaj that he just heard Sukadeva Goswami. So he didn't do even kirtana, neither like with the body, service with the body. So it seems that hearing is like the main, just hearing. We can just hearing attain perfection. Even when we see that we can have like a together like hearing and serving the body, still hearing is more kind of powerful.
Yeah, but hearing is also considered a service. We use the ear in the service of Krishna, and we hear. But that hearing, to do that, one should hear with attention. That hearing with attention. It's not easy. Many times doubts comes and so. Hearing with care and attention. Shraddha it's a service. That, but yes, all 9 processes of devotional service, it's a process of devotional service, hearing, Shravana, are 9 processes. Whatever process you choose, with one process you can attain perfection. But usually we combine them. And as Prabhupada in the morning program combines them all. Because we hear now Shravanam, Kirtanam. Yeah, we have done Kirtan. And Smaranam Vishnu, hopefully we remember Krishna. That's also service. Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. That's deity worship. Archana, many forms of deity worship. Vandana, prayers, so many prayers. Prayers to the spiritual masters, prayers to Krishna, prayers before the lecture. So many prayers. Hare Krishna mantra is in some sense also a prayer. Vandanam, Dasyam, serving. We do puja for Prabhupada, serve the deity. Sakyam Atmani Vednam. Sakyam is more internal, is serving, and Krishna seeing Krishna's your best friend, which is Atmani Vednam, giving everything to Krishna. That should be the result. We give everything to Krishna. And that is mentioned in the purport also. It means we have body, mind, and soul. We use all 3 in the service of Krishna. Nothing withhold. That's Atmani Vedana. So yes, this are the processes of devotional service. Even one of them, it's true, but like we know that Maharaj Parikshit was only hearing, and Sukadeva Goswami was only speaking. But they were all both pure devotees that just one take the role of hearing and the other of speaking. That you have all these processes that Prahlad got perfection by smaranam, remembering the Lord. Remember the Lord always. Yeah. So you have examples for each of them. But Ambarish Maharaj practiced all nine. He used his body, he used his mind to think of Krishna, his hands to cleanse the temple floor. He used his feet to go to the temple, his ears to hear about Krishna. He used all his senses always in the service of the Lord. But that is an art we have to learn from the spiritual master. Spiritual master knows how to do that because he's always constantly engaged. Because we are constantly engaged, have all our senses in the service of Krishna. No time for Maya. Srila Prabhupada, I think in the beginning, San Francisco or something. He was giving the Bhagavatam class and a devotee asked in the morning at the class, Prabhupada, do you have any, or Swamiji at that time, do you have any lust in your mind? It's quite you must have the audacity to ask that, but he did. And Prabhupada humbly said yes. But then after the class, he went to another temple and he went of the door and was going into the car and the devotee opened the door. The devotee asked that question, opened the door. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, yes, I have lust in my mind, but I have no time for it. So that's the point. If we are, every second we are not engaged in devotional service and we listen to the mind, we are gone. Always control the mind by engaging it in devotional service. That's an art to be learned. And of course, in the beginning we cannot do that, but gradually we become more expert. Then, does that help? My question. Yes? Mm. Well, the reason for that is that because in the conditioned state, we are disconnected from ourself, our real self. And but by nature, we want personal association, relationships, and so on. That's natural because, but our ultimate relationship with Lord Krishna. And we serve the spiritual master and give satisfaction. You have a person to deal with, and that's. But that. Why don't we get the same from Vani? It's because of the contamination of our heart. Our relationship with Krishna is not yet re-established. established. Because relationship with Krishna means is absolute. His holy name is not different. That his instructions are not different. So the Vani of the spiritual master is spiritual master repeats the instructions of Krishna. That they are as good than Krishna. But in the beginning, because we don't realize that, because of the contamination of our heart, I realized that when my spiritual master left, it's very heavy. Because it's a very intimate relationship. It's not like material relationships. And the feelings of separation are very hard. But then I realized that he is still present in his instructions. You can feel his presence in his instructions. And that is also what Prabhupada said, I'm in my books, I'm there. But because we are not yet pure, we don't realize that. Once we realize that and we feel constantly Krishna in our heart, we are completely satisfied. I hope that helps to understand. Yes, that purifies us, and surely we will realize that because many the Prabhupada disciples also, when Prabhupada was still here, they realized that it's having a personal association is nice, but it's more important to serve him, more important to serve his mission than to have his personal association. That they realize that Prabhupada is more pleased when we do our service. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Shantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.